Hey guys, tonight we are stepping into a world of crystal highball glasses, perfectly chilled martinis, and enough unspoken social rules to fill an etiquette manual nobody ever actually published. We're talking about the 1950s American cocktail party, that shimmering ritual where neighbours became performers, living rooms became stages, and one wrong move with the cheese platter could haunt you until the next block party. Before we dive in, take a second to like this video and subscribe if you enjoy these quiet explorations of everyday life from another era. And a huge, sincere thank you to the viewer who suggested this topic. You always send the most wonderful ideas, the kind that make me want to dig deeper into the small, beautiful rituals that shaped how people lived. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I know someone out there is settling in at 2:43 in the morning with a cup of tea, and honestly, that is exactly the vibe we're going for. Also, the channel is now live on Spotify, so if you prefer listening there, the link is in the description. No pressure, just another way to let these stories keep you company. Now, dim the lights if you can. Maybe switch on a fan for that soft white noise. Get comfortable, really comfortable, because tonight you're not just learning about cocktail parties, you're attending one. Think about it for a moment. What did it actually feel like to host a cocktail party in 1956? How did you know which dress code to follow when nobody ever said it out loud? What happened if you showed up too early or stayed too late? How did people navigate conversations in a room full of neighbours who smiled warmly but kept score silently? What was the right way to hold your drink, compliment the hostess, excuse yourself from a boring story, or recover from a social stumble that everyone pretended not to notice? And more importantly, could you survive a single cocktail hour without breaking one of the invisible rules everyone somehow already knew? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up on a Saturday afternoon in 1955. Your living room is spotless, the bar cart is stocked, someone down the street is mowing their lawn, and in exactly 4 hours your neighbours will arrive at your door expecting perfection, poise, and a very cold martini. The cocktail party is tonight, and every single rule is unwritten. Good luck. The invitation arrives on a Tuesday afternoon, slipped into your mailbox between the electric bill and a coupon for dish soap. It is handwritten on cream-coloured cardstock, the kind that feels expensive when you run your thumb across it. The script is looped and elegant, each letter carefully formed as though someone spent an entire afternoon practicing your name. Cocktails at our place, Saturday at 7. Casual. But casual in the 1950s does not mean what it will come to mean decades later. Casual means you still dress beautifully, still arrive precisely on time, still bring a hostess gift, and still behave as though this effortless gathering required no effort at all. You hold the invitation carefully, reading it twice, then a third time, searching for clues hidden between the lines. Cocktails suggest drinks, obviously, but also appetizers, conversation, music. 7 means evening attire but not formal. Casual means approachable but not sloppy, friendly but not overfamiliar. You set the card on your kitchen counter where you can see it, where it can remind you daily that you have been invited, included, welcomed into someone's home. Your spouse notices it that evening, picking it up with mild interest. The Hendersons are having people over, you say, Saturday night. Your spouse nods, already mentally cataloguing what needs to happen before then. Haircut, shoes polished, that one tie dry cleaned. Hosting and attending are both performances, and neither can be done without preparation. By Wednesday, you have already decided what to bring. A bottle of wine feels safe, classic. The kind of gesture that shows thoughtfulness without showing off. You drive to the liquor store after work, wandering the aisles slowly, reading labels you do not fully understand. The man behind the counter suggests something French, something reliable. You buy it, have it wrapped in tissue paper, and tuck it carefully into your hall closet where it will wait until Saturday. Thursday, you plan your outfit. You stand in front of your closet, pulling dresses from hangers, holding them up to the mirror, trying to see yourself the way others will see you. Not too fancy, not too plain. Something that says you made an effort but did not overthink it, even though you absolutely are overthinking it. You settle on a navy cocktail dress with a modest neckline and a hem that hits just below the knee. Classic, appropriate, safe. Friday night, you barely sleep. You lie awake rehearsing small talk, imagining conversations, practicing compliments. You think about the last time you saw Mrs. Henderson at the grocery store, how warm she was, how easy the conversation felt. You hope Saturday will feel the same. You hope you will say the right things. You hope your hostess gift will be well received. You hope you will not accidentally break one of the unspoken rules everyone seems to know instinctively except you. Saturday afternoon arrives. You bathe, set your hair, apply your makeup with the careful precision of someone preparing for an audition. Your spouse dresses in the bedroom, adjusting his tie 3 times until it sits perfectly. You both move through the house quietly, seriously, like athletes preparing for competition. By 6:30, you are ready. The wine sits on the hall table. Your gloves rest beside your purse. You check the mirror one final time. You look appropriate, polished, nervous but hiding it well. The invitation said casual, but standing here, dressed and anxious, you realize there is nothing casual about any of this. This is theatre, this is ritual, this is 1955, and you are about to step onto a stage where everyone knows their lines except you. You stand on your neighbour's front porch at 6:58, clutching a bottle of wine you deliberated over for 20 minutes at the liquor store. The porch light glows warmly above the door, illuminating a wreath made of something seasonal and tasteful. You can hear muffled laughter and the clink of glassware inside. Your watch ticks forward. 6:59. You wait, because arriving even 1 minute early would suggest desperation or poor planning, but arriving late would imply disrespect or, worse, that you had somewhere better to be. So you stand there in the cool evening air, timing your knock with the precision of someone defusing a very polite bomb. Your spouse shifts beside you, equally uncomfortable with this strange liminal moment. "We could just knock now," they whisper. You shake your head firmly, "Not yet." You have read enough etiquette columns to know that timing matters, that showing up early puts undue pressure on a hostess who might still be adjusting her lipstick or hiding a dish towel. Early guests are burdens, late guests are rude, on-time guests are golden. The second hand sweeps around your watch face. 7 o'clock arrives like a starting gun. You lift your hand and knock 3 times, firm but not aggressive, the knock of someone who belongs here but knows better than to assume. The door opens almost immediately, as though Mrs. Henderson has been standing on the other side, waiting, performing her own version of this careful choreography. She's radiant, smiling, her dress shimmering softly under the porch light. "You made it," she says warmly, as though your arrival was ever in question, as though she has not been expecting you at precisely this moment for the past 48 hours. You step inside, offering the wine with a rehearsed line. "Just a little something, I hope you enjoy it." She accepts it graciously, cradling the bottle as though you have handed her a rare treasure. "Oh, how thoughtful," she says. "You really did not have to. But of course you did. Not bringing something would have been unthinkable." Behind you, more guests arrive. The Martins at 7:02, the Caldwells at 7:04, each couple pausing briefly on the porch, checking watches, smoothing hair, preparing themselves for entry. No one arrives at 6:55. No one arrives at 7:15. Everyone arrives in that narrow magical window between 7 and 7:10, the socially acceptable zone where punctuality meets politeness. You realise, standing in the foyer as coats are collected and pleasantries exchanged, that this timing is part of the unspoken contract. It demonstrates respect. It shows you understand the rules. It proves you're the kind of person who can be invited again, trusted to show up when expected, neither too eager nor too aloof. Mrs. Henderson ushers you into the living room, where the early arrivals are already standing with drinks, their faces glowing with the soft relief of people who have successfully navigated the first hurdle of the evening. You join them, accepting a cocktail from Mr. Henderson, who moves through the room with the easy confidence of someone who has done this many times before. The clock on the mantel reads 7:08. More guests will arrive in the next few minutes, each one slipping through the door at the exact moment decorum allows, and then, at 7:15, the door will close. The party will begin in earnest, and anyone who arrives after that will have to ring the bell, interrupting the flow, announcing their lateness to a room full of people who managed to arrive on time. You sip your drink and feel the tension in your shoulders ease. You made it. You are here, you are on time, and in the world of 1950s cocktail parties, that alone is a victory worth celebrating. The door swings open, and there she is, your hostess, radiant in a cocktail dress that somehow looks both effortless and exquisite. Her hair is perfectly set, her lipstick unchipped, her smile warm enough to melt winter. She greets you as though your arrival has made her entire evening. even though you know, somewhere deep in her exhausted soul, she has been preparing for this moment since dawn. Behind her, the living room glows softly, every lamp positioned just so, every coaster aligned, every throw pillow fluffed into submission. She takes your coat with the grace of someone who has done this 100 times, which she has, and ushers you inside with a warmth that feels genuine because, in a way, it is. But you catch something in her eyes, just for a second, a flicker of fatigue, a shadow of the chaos that preceded this moment of perfection. You know what she has been through today because you have been through it yourself. The frantic cleaning, the last-minute grocery run, the realization at 4 o'clock that she forgot cocktail onions and had to send her husband back to the store, the slight burn on her thumb from the oven, the moment she almost cried into the dish towel because the deviled eggs were not setting properly. None of that shows now. Now she's composed, gracious, the picture of effortless hospitality. She compliments your dress, asks about your week, laughs at something your spouse says, all while mentally tracking 18 different tasks happening simultaneously in other rooms. She's a conductor, a general, a swan gliding serenely across the surface, while her feet paddle frantically underneath. You hand her the wine and she receives it as though it is the most thoughtful gift she has ever been given, even though 3 other guests have brought the exact same bottle. "How lovely," she says, turning it over in her hands. "We will open this later." She hands it off to her husband, who materializes at her elbow like a well-trained assistant, and he disappears toward the kitchen while she continues greeting the next arrivals. She remembers everyone's name. She recalls small details from previous conversations. She asks Mrs. Caldwell about her mother's health, compliments Mr. Martin's new eyeglasses, laughs warmly at a joke someone tells in the foyer. She is present, engaged, attentive, even though part of her brain is calculating whether the ice will hold out, and whether anyone has noticed the small water stain on the ceiling that she tried to cover with a strategically placed photograph. You watch her move through the room later, refreshing drinks, offering appetizers, smoothing a wrinkle from the tablecloth. She's tireless. She's luminous. She makes it all look so easy that you almost forget it is work, constant, invisible, relentless work that will leave her collapsed on the sofa the moment the last guest leaves. There is something heroic about it, you think, this performance of ease. She has created a space where everyone feels welcome, comfortable, cared for. She has opened her home and filled it with warmth, and she has done it all while pretending it required no effort at all. Sometime around 8:30, you pass her in the hallway. She's carrying an empty tray back to the kitchen, her smile still fixed in place, though you notice her heels have left small red marks on the backs of her feet. "You okay?" you asked quietly, and for just a moment, the mask slips. She exhales, a small, almost inaudible sigh. "I think so," she says. Then she smiles again, brighter this time, and the hostess returns. "Are you having a good time?" she asks, and you realize the question is genuine. Despite everything, despite the exhaustion, she genuinely wants to know. You nod. It is a wonderful party. Everything is perfect. Her smile softens, becomes real. "Thank you," she says. "That means a lot." Then she glides back into the living room, tray balanced on one arm, ready to greet the evening again as though she has never been tired a day in her life. You step into the living room and it takes your breath away, not because it is grand, but because it is perfect. The furniture gleams beneath soft lighting. The coffee table holds a silver tray of hors d'oeuvres arranged like tiny works of art. A vase of fresh flowers sits on the mantel, their petals just open enough to suggest they bloomed this morning specifically for this party. The record player hums quietly in the corner, spinning something smooth and instrumental, the kind of music that fills silence without demanding attention. Every surface is clean, every detail intentional, and yet the room somehow still feels lived in, warm, welcoming. You realize that what looks effortless actually required hours of invisible labor. The sofa cushions are arranged at precise angles, each one fluffed and positioned as though auditioning for a magazine spread. The throw pillows, 3 of them in coordinating shades of cream and sage, rest against the armrests with the casual elegance of models who know their best side. Not a single crumb mars the upholstery. Not a single wrinkle disturbs the fabric. The coffee table is a study in restrained abundance. The silver tray holds deviled eggs, each one topped with a perfect curl of paprika. Beside it, A small crystal bowl cradles cocktail onions speared on toothpicks. A wooden board displays cheese sliced into uniform squares, accompanied by crackers fanned out like a dealer's hand of cards. Everything is bite-sized, portable, designed for guests who will be standing, mingling, holding drinks in one hand and navigating appetizers with the other. The lighting is what really makes the room glow. No overhead fixture glares down harshly. Instead, table lamps cast pools of golden warmth from strategic corners. A floor lamp behind the armchair illuminates just enough to read by, should anyone be inspired to pick up one of the carefully selected books on the side table. The lamps have been fitted with bulbs of specific wattages, chosen to flatter skin tones and soften shadows. This is not accidental. This is lighting as an act of care. The flowers on the mantel are fresh cut, their stems trimmed at angles, arranged in a crystal vase that catches and refracts the lamplight into tiny rainbows. They are seasonal, appropriate, neither too showy nor too sparse. You suspect your hostess clipped them from her own garden this afternoon, standing in the cool air with scissors and a vision, selecting each bloom for colour, size, and the way it would look from across the room. Even the air smells intentional. There's a faint trace of furniture polish, lemon-scented and clean. Beneath that, the warm aroma of something baking, probably the cheese puffs your hostess mentioned casually as though they required no effort. And woven through it all, the subtle fragrance of the flowers, fresh and green and alive. The record player sits in the corner on a low cabinet, its wooden case polished to a shine. The album spinning now is something jazzy and understated, a soundtrack that wraps around conversation without overpowering it. Your host has curated a stack of records, each one selected for mood, tempo, and the particular moment of the evening it will underscore. Later, when the party's in full swing, the music will grow livelier. For now, it hums quietly, a gentle invitation to relax. You notice the details as you move through the room. The books on the shelf are alphabetized, their spines facing outward in neat rows. The ashtrays are empty, waiting. The coasters are stacked beside each lamp, ready to protect surfaces from sweating glasses. The windows are spotless, reflecting the room back at itself in clean, clear panes. This is not how the room looks every day. You know that. Everyone knows that. In its everyday life, this room holds newspapers, scattered mail, shoes kicked off after work, the comfortable chaos of actual living. But tonight, it has been transformed. Tonight, it is a stage set, a carefully constructed illusion of effortless elegance. And the magic of it is that it works. Standing here, drink in hand, you feel elevated somehow. The room's perfection invites you to rise to meet it, to be your best self, to participate in the beautiful fiction that life can be this polished, this gracious, this warm. You smooth your dress, straighten your posture, and step further into the glowing space, ready to play your part in the evening's carefully choreographed performance. In the corner of the living room sits the bar cart, gleaming like a small altar dedicated to sophisticated adulthood. Crystal decanters filled with amber liquids catch the light. Cocktail shakers rest beside silver ice buckets beading with condensation. Bottles of gin, whiskey, vermouth, and something mysterious and European stand at attention, their labels facing outward like soldiers on display. The cart is not just functional, it is a statement, a declaration that this household understands the rituals of hospitality, that cocktails here are not poured carelessly but crafted with care. You approach it slowly, respectfully, as though entering a temple where the gods drink martinis. The cart itself is a piece of furniture worthy of admiration. Brass and glass, 2 tiers, wheels that roll smoothly across hardwood floors. The brass has been polished until it reflects the room in soft golden tones. The glass shelves are spotless, not a fingerprint or watermark to mar their clarity. This cart did not come cheap, and it wants you to know that. On the top tier, the bottles stand in careful arrangement. The gin, a brand your host probably researched before purchasing, occupies the place of honour. Beside it, a bottle of French vermouth, barely used, its label elegant and unreadable. A whiskey decanter, crystal with a heavy stopper, holds amber liquid that glows like bottled sunlight. Vodka, still relatively exotic in the 1950s, sits at the back, a nod to modernity and continental sophistication. The second tier holds the tools of the trade. A cocktail shaker, silver and beautifully weighted, sits ready for action. A small strainer rests beside it, a long-handled spoon for stirring, a jigger for measuring, though your host rarely uses it, preferring to pour by feel, by instinct, by years of practice, a corkscrew, a bottle opener shaped like a fish, a small cutting board with a paring knife for citrus garnishes. The ice bucket sweats gently, condensation beading on its silver surface. Inside, ice cubes clink and shift, slowly melting in the warm room. Your host will need to refresh it later, carrying the bucket back to the kitchen, chipping more ice from the freezer trays, maintaining the cold that makes every drink crisp and perfect. Beside the bucket sits a small bowl of lemon twists, pre-cut and curled, their oils waiting to be expressed over the rim of a glass. Another bowl holds olives, green and firm, speared on toothpicks. A third contains cocktail onions for Gibsons, though no one ever seems to order Gibsons. Still, they are there, ready, just in case. Your host mans the cart with the confidence of a bartender who has mixed 1,000 drinks. "What can I get you?" he asks, and you consider your options. The ritual requires thought, a moment of contemplation before committing. A martini, you say, and he nods approvingly, as though you have passed a small test. He works with practiced efficiency. Ice into the shaker. Gin poured in a smooth arc. A whisper of vermouth, just enough to acknowledge its existence. The shaker lifted, a vigorous rattling, the ice dancing inside like applause. He strains the liquid into a chilled glass, the martini crystal clear and cold. A lemon twist, expressed and dropped in with a small flourish. "There you are," he says, handing it to you with quiet pride. You take the glass and sip. It is perfect, cold, clean, balanced, the kind of martini that makes you understand why people write poems about cocktails. You compliment him, and he shrugs modestly, but you can see the pleasure in his eyes. The bar cart is his domain, his stage, and he performs here with the skill of someone who takes this responsibility seriously. As the evening progresses, he will return to the cart again and again, mixing drinks, refreshing ice, wiping down the glass shelves with a bar towel kept discreetly beneath the bottom tier. He will field requests, offer suggestions, steer guests away from complicated drinks that would slow the evening's momentum. He is not just a host, he is a craftsman, and the bar cart is his workshop. You watch him work, admiring the ease, the confidence, the unspoken knowledge that a well-made drink is a form of hospitality, a way of saying welcome, stay, enjoy. The bar cart gleams under the lamplight, beautiful and functional, a small shrine to the belief that evenings should be civilized, that gatherings deserve care, that a good cocktail can make any party feel like something worth remembering. Your host appears at your elbow, cocktail shaker in hand, asking what you would like to drink. His movements are confident, practiced, the motions of a man who has mixed 1,000 drinks and knows exactly how much vermouth belongs in a martini. He pours with flair, a little showmanship, the ice clinking musically as he shakes. Meanwhile, his wife floats through the room, refilling snack bowls, adjusting coasters, steering conversations with the subtle skill of a conductor guiding an orchestra. He is the bartender. She is the architect. Together, they make it look easy, even though both of them are performing miracles of coordination that will leave them exhausted tomorrow. You watch this dance unfold throughout the evening, this division of labour so deeply ingrained that neither of them questions it. He holds court at the bar cart, performing masculinity through mixology, his domain clearly marked and respected. No one else touches the shaker, no one else pours. To do so would be to step on his stage, to undermine his role in this carefully choreographed production. He knows his drinks. He can make a Manhattan without thinking, a Tom Collins without measuring, a martini so dry it barely remembers what vermouth looks like. He jokes with the men, claps shoulders, laughs at stories, all while his hands move automatically through the rituals of ice and liquor and garnish. This is his contribution, his way of hosting, and he does it well. But watch his wife. Watch her closely. She is everywhere and nowhere, visible and invisible, the unseen force that makes the entire evening possible. She circulates through the room with a tray of appetizers, offering them to guests with a warm smile. She notices when the deviled eggs are running low and disappears into the kitchen to refill the plate. She spots an empty glass before its owner realizes it needs refreshing, and alerts her husband with a subtle gesture he understands immediately. She manages the music drifting to the record player when one album ends, selecting the next with care, keeping the soundtrack smooth and appropriate. She adjusts the lighting when the sun finally sets, turning on one more lamp to keep the room glowing. She rescues a guest who has been cornered by someone with strong opinions about lawn fertilizer, steering the conversation gently towards safer topics. She remembers dietary restrictions without making a fuss. She notices when someone looks uncomfortable and finds a way to include them in conversation. She sees the small crisis brewing when two guests who do not particularly like each other drift too close and redirects one toward the bookshelf with a question about a novel they might enjoy. She does all of this while appearing completely relaxed, as though she is simply another guest enjoying the party. No one sees her counting appetizers, calculating how long the ice will last, mentally reviewing her timeline for bringing out the second round of hors d'oeuvres. No one notices that she has not sat down once, has not finished a single drink, has eaten nothing but a single cracker grabbed quickly in the kitchen between tasks. Her husband, mixing drinks at the bar cart, is performing a visible role. He is the host, capital H, the man of the house offering liquid hospitality. But she is the host in a deeper, more complex sense. She is the architect of the evening, the invisible hand that shapes every moment, the quiet force that ensures everyone feels welcome, comfortable, cared for. You catch her eye at one point and smile, a small gesture of recognition from one woman who understands hosting to another. She smiles back, grateful, and for a moment the mask slips just enough for you to see the calculation behind it, the constant mental juggling, the exhaustion that will not be acknowledged until tomorrow. The men cluster near the bar cart, drinks in hand, voices growing louder as the evening progresses. They discuss sports, politics, work, the safe topics that bond men in living rooms across America. They feel proud of themselves for this gathering, for this party that is going so well. And they should feel proud. They are doing their part. But the women know the truth. They exchange glances across the room, small smiles of understanding, acknowledgement of the invisible labour that makes these evenings possible. They know who planned the menu, who cleaned the house, who arranged the flowers, who will stay up late washing glasses and wiping down surfaces after everyone leaves. The bar cart gleams, the drinks flow, the men pour and joke and feel accomplished, and behind it all, quietly, efficiently, tirelessly, the women orchestrate everything else, making it all look effortless, natural, easy. This is the bargain of the 1950s cocktail party. He performs, she produces. Together they create the illusion that hospitality simply happens, as though parties throw themselves, as though homes clean themselves, as though the evening's success is just good luck rather than good planning. You sip your perfectly made martini, thank your host, and watch his wife disappear into the kitchen once again, carrying an empty tray, already thinking 3 steps ahead, already solving problems before they become visible. You raise your glass to her silently, a private toast to the women who make the magic happen while everyone else watches the show. You glance around the room and realize with quiet relief that you dressed correctly. The women wear cocktail dresses, hemlines hitting just below the knee, fabrics that shimmer softly under the lamps, pearls rest against collarbones, heels click gently on hardwood floors. The men wear suits, crisp shirts, ties knotted with care. No one looks overdressed, no one looks underdressed. Everyone exists in that perfect middle ground of polished but not pompous, elegant but not showy. You did not receive instructions on what to wear, yet somehow everyone knew. That is the magic and the terror of 1950s etiquette. The rules were never written down, but breaking them was unforgivable. The women move through the room like a collection of coordinated elegance. Mrs. Martin wears emerald green, the fabric catching light as she turns. Mrs. Caldwell chose navy with a modest neckline and 3/4 sleeves. The younger woman from down the street, newly married, wears pale pink with a cinched waist and a full skirt that swishes when she walks. Each dress is different, but each follows the same unspoken template. Sophisticated, feminine, appropriate for evening but not for a gala. The jewellery is equally calibrated. Pearls dominate, classic and safe, the accessory that signals good taste without shouting about it. A few women wear small diamond earrings or delicate gold bracelets, just enough sparkle to catch candlelight without overwhelming. No one wears costume jewellery that looks like costume jewellery. No one wears anything too large, too flashy, too attention-seeking. The goal is elegance, not exhibition. The shoes tell their own story. Heels, all of them, but practical heels, the kind you can stand in for 3 hours without requiring emergency medical intervention. 2 inches, maybe 2.5. Closed toe, mostly, with the occasional modest peep toe for the more daring. The shoes are polished, pristine, matching their dresses or complementing them thoughtfully. No one wears flats. Flats would suggest you did not care enough to make an effort. The men present their own uniform of respectability. Suits in charcoal, navy, brown, the safe colours of masculine propriety. White shirts, crisp and pressed, no wrinkles permitted. Ties in subtle patterns, nothing too bold, nothing that might start a conversation or raise an eyebrow. Pocket squares for some, but folded conservatively, a gentle accent rather than a statement. Their shoes are leather, polished to a subtle shine. Oxfords mostly laced properly, no scuffs or wear visible. These are the shoes men reserve for occasions that matter, for church and weddings and cocktail parties, shoes that announce their wearer takes this gathering seriously. You notice the small touches that separate those who understand the code from those who might be learning it. The perfectly tied Windsor knots, the cufflinks that match without being too matchy, the way the women's hair is set just so, curled and sprayed into shapes that will hold for hours, the manicures subtle but present, nails filed to uniform length and painted in soft pinks or clear polish. Even grooming is part of the uniform. What would happen, you wonder, if someone arrived in the wrong outfit? Not egregiously wrong, not jeans and a sweatshirt, that would never happen because people understand the basic category of cocktail party. But wrong in subtle ways. A dress too casual, better suited for afternoon shopping. A suit too formal, boardroom rather than living room. Shoes too flat or too high. Jewellery too loud or noticeably absent. The person would not be turned away. No one would say anything directly, but they would feel it, the way you feel a draft in a warm room, the slight discomfort of not quite belonging. Conversations would include them, but not embrace them. Glances would flicker, quick assessments made and filed away, and next time, if there was a next time, they would adjust. They would learn. The code would absorb them or exclude them, and the choice ultimately would be theirs. You smooth your own dress, grateful again that you chose correctly. You spent an hour in front of your closet yesterday, holding up options, imagining yourself in this room, testing each outfit against your mental image of what everyone else would wear. You guessed right. You read the invisible signals and dressed accordingly. That is the skill 1950s social life demands, the ability to receive information that was never transmitted, to follow rules that were never explained, to participate in a collective understanding that exists only in the space between people. The invitation said casual, but casual never meant careless. It meant dress like you care but pretend you did not think about it. Looking around the room now, at the carefully coordinated elegance, at the pearls and pressed suits and polished shoes, you realize everyone thought about it. Everyone stood in front of their closet deliberating, choosing, second-guessing. Everyone arrived here tonight wearing not just clothes but armour, the protective layer of appropriate dress that announces, I belong here, I understand the rules, I am one of you. And somehow, miraculously, it worked. The room looks exactly as a cocktail party should look. Elegant, coordinated, effortless. No one will ever know how much effort it actually took to look this effortless. That is the final rule, the one that makes all the others possible. Never let them see you try. You find your hostess near the kitchen, balancing a tray of deviled eggs with the poise of a ballet dancer. You approach carefully, timing your compliment to land between her tasks. Your home looks absolutely lovely, you say warmly. She beams, deflecting immediately. Oh, it is nothing really. Just threw a few things together. You both know this is a lie. You both know she spent the entire afternoon vacuuming, dusting, arranging, and probably crying once into a dish towel. But the ritual requires modesty, so you nod and add, well, it is just beautiful. She thanks you again, her smile genuine this time, because in a world where so much labour goes unseen, your acknowledgement feels like oxygen. The compliment cannot be too effusive. Too much praise and you risk making her uncomfortable, suggesting that you are surprised by her success, that you expected less. You cannot say, wow, I cannot believe how great everything looks, because the subtext reads, I thought your home was usually a disaster. Instead, you calibrate carefully, landing on lovely or beautiful or wonderful, words that acknowledge her effort without overdoing it. You also cannot compliment just one thing too specifically. If you say, these deviled eggs are incredible, The implication is that everything else is merely acceptable. The compliment must be general enough to encompass the entire effort: the cleaning, the cooking, the decorating, the orchestration of details that transformed an ordinary Saturday into this glowing evening. Timing matters too. You delivered your compliment early, within the first 30 minutes, soon enough to show you noticed, not so early that it sounds obligatory. A compliment at the very beginning, while coats are still being collected, feels transactional, a ticket price for entry. A compliment too late as you're leaving sounds like an afterthought. But here, now, as the party is settling into its rhythm, the compliment lands with weight and meaning. Other guests offer their own versions throughout the evening. "What a lovely gathering," someone says near the fireplace. "Everything is just perfect," another adds while accepting a drink. Each compliment is received with the same choreographed modesty. "Oh, thank you, but really it is nothing special. I'm just so glad you could come." The hostess deflects, redirects, minimizes, because to accept the compliment fully would be to acknowledge the labor, and acknowledging the labor would shatter the illusion of effortlessness. You watch this dance repeat as the evening progresses. The hostess receives praise like a skilled diplomat, gracious but never boastful, grateful but never smug. She has perfected the art of accepting compliments while simultaneously deflecting them, a balance so delicate it requires years of practice. Later, you find yourself in the kitchen helping carry glasses to the sink, and she lets the mask slip for just a moment. "I was so worried about the timing," she confesses quietly. "The cheese puffs were supposed to come out before everyone arrived, but then the Martins showed up early and I was still in my robe, and I nearly had a complete breakdown in the pantry." You laugh softly, grateful for this glimpse behind the curtain. "It looks perfect now," you tell her, and you mean it. No one would ever know. She exhales, a long, slow breath of relief. "That is all I wanted," she says, "for it to look like I was not trying. That is the secret," you realize. The compliment is not just about acknowledging what she has created, it is about acknowledging her success in hiding the work. You're complimenting the performance as much as the product, the seamless illusion that this beauty simply appeared, that elegance is her natural state rather than something she had to construct piece by careful piece. Before you return to the party, she touches your arm gently. "Thank you," she says, "for noticing, for saying something. It means more than you know." And you understand, suddenly, how much weight these small acknowledgements carry, how much courage it takes to open your home and create something beautiful, knowing that most of the labor will go unnoticed, that most guests will assume it was easy. The compliment is not just politeness. It is recognition. It is seeing the invisible work and naming it gently, without making too much of it, without embarrassing the person who worked so hard to make it look effortless. It is the small currency of appreciation that makes the whole exhausting enterprise feel worthwhile. You return to the living room, your own compliment delivered and received, and notice other guests murmuring their approval to each other, to the hostess, to the host. The room fills with these small offerings of praise, each one carefully worded, each one landing like a gift. And the hostess receives them all with grace, with gratitude, with the practiced modesty that signals she is, above all else, someone who understands the rules. You settle into a small cluster of guests near the fireplace, drink in hand, and the conversation begins. It flows easily, touching on safe topics: the weather, recent home improvements, the new grocery store opening downtown, someone's upcoming vacation. The rhythm is gentle, inclusive, no one dominating, no one left out. But beneath the pleasant chatter runs a current of invisible rules. You do not discuss money, religion, or politics. You do not complain about your spouse, your health, or your job. You do not overshare, interrupt, or monopolize. The goal is not depth, it is harmony, a smooth, pleasant exchange that leaves everyone feeling warm and no one feeling uncomfortable. The weather is always a reliable opening. Someone mentions the recent warm spell, how nice it has been for getting the garden ready. Someone else nods, agrees, adds that their tomatoes are already showing promise. It is bland, inoffensive, a conversational appetizer that requires no commitment and sparks no controversy. From weather, the conversation drifts naturally to home projects. Mr. Martin is repainting his garage. Mrs. Caldwell is having new curtains made for the dining room. These are safe disclosures, Neutral accomplishments that invite mild interest without probing too deep. No one asks how much the curtains cost. No one inquires whether the painting is being done to cover a deeper problem, a crack in the foundation, a marriage in trouble. The surface is all that matters. Someone mentions the new grocery store, the one opening on Maple Street next month. "Oh, I heard about that," another guest says. "Apparently they will have a whole aisle just for frozen foods." The group murmurs appreciation, progress, convenience. Modern life improving in small, manageable increments. No one mentions that the new store will likely put the corner market out of business, that Mr. Peterson, who runs the market, has 3 kids in school and a mortgage. That would be uncomfortable. That would violate the unspoken agreement to keep things light. The conversation shifts to vacation plans. The Hendersons are driving to the coast in July. 2 weeks, she says, with a smile that manages to be both proud and modest. "We rented a little cabin right on the water. Everyone responds with polite enthusiasm. How wonderful. You will love it. The children will have such a good time." No one asks how they can afford 2 weeks away. No one mentions their own financial constraints that make vacation impossible this year. Envy, if it exists, remains carefully hidden beneath congratulations. Throughout the evening, certain topics hover at the edges but never enter the circle. No one mentions the recent election, though everyone has opinions. No one discusses the tensions at the local school board meeting, though half the room attended. No one brings up religion, even though tomorrow is Sunday and most of these people will see each other at church. These subjects are too divisive, too charged with the potential for disagreement, and disagreement is the enemy of a successful cocktail party. Personal struggles remain similarly off-limits. No one mentions their aging parent who is declining rapidly in a nursing home. No one discusses their teenager who is struggling in school. No one confesses their own fears, doubts, or midnight anxieties. The cocktail party is not group therapy. It is a space for pleasant fictions, for the presentation of lives that are going well, moving forward, free from the messy complications that actually define human existence. You listen to a story about someone's recent trip to the hardware store, a mild misadventure involving the wrong size screws and a helpful clerk. Everyone chuckles. The story has no stakes, no consequences, no emotional weight. It is perfect cocktail party material, amusing without being too funny, engaging without requiring too much attention, forgettable but pleasant. When someone starts to veer into dangerous territory, complaining about their boss or mentioning something too personal, the group gently redirects. Another guest asks a question that pivots the conversation back to safer ground. The social contract is enforced not through confrontation, but through subtle, collective steering. You realize, standing in this circle of neighbors and acquaintances, that you're all participating in an elaborate performance of normalcy. Everyone here has problems, worries, secrets. Everyone here is struggling with something, large or small. But tonight, in this warm living room, you have all agreed to set that aside, to be the polished versions of yourselves, to create a space where nothing is wrong and everything is fine, and life is just a series of pleasant updates about weather and groceries and vacation plans. It is exhausting in a way, but it is also comforting. There is something soothing about this predictable exchange, this agreement to keep things light and easy and safe. Tomorrow, you can return to your real life with all its complications. But tonight, for these few hours, you can pretend that everything is simple, that everyone is happy, that the world is exactly as ordered and peaceful as this carefully managed conversation suggests. The coffee table holds a spread that looks like it was lifted from a magazine. Deviled eggs topped with paprika, celery sticks stuffed with cream cheese, crackers fanned out beside a wedge of cheddar, shrimp cocktail arranged in a glass bowl over ice, and those little rolled sandwiches with the crust cut off, each one held together with a toothpick crowned by an olive. Everything is bite-sized, portable, designed to be eaten while standing and holding a drink. You take a deviled egg and it tastes like effort, like someone woke up early to boil, peel, mash, and pipe. It tastes like care, and you are grateful for it, even if you cannot say so out loud. The deviled eggs are arranged in a circular pattern on a glass plate, each one positioned with the precision of a jeweler setting stones. The yolk filling is piped in perfect swirls, the paprika dusted on top in a light, even layer. You lift one carefully, aware that disrupting the arrangement would be a small tragedy. The egg white is firm but not rubbery. The filling is creamy, tangy with mustard and vinegar, rich with mayonnaise. It dissolves on your tongue, and for a moment you're transported to someone's kitchen hours ago, watching them carefully spoon the yolk mixture into a pastry bag, squeezing it gently, concentrating on making each egg identical to the last. The celery sticks stand at attention in a small crystal dish, each one stuffed with cream cheese that has been softened to spreadable consistency and mixed with something, maybe chives, maybe a hint of garlic. They are cold, crisp, refreshing. The cream cheese provides richness to balance the celery's clean crunch. This is not food that fills you. This is food that punctuates conversation, gives your hand something to do, provides a reason to pause and chew while someone else takes their turn talking. The cheese and crackers occupy their own wooden board, a small landscape of dairy and grain. The cheese has been sliced into perfect squares, each one the exact size to fit on a cracker without overhang. A small knife rests beside it, mother-of-pearl handle, blade wiped clean after each use by the hostess making her rounds. The crackers are arranged in overlapping rows, a fan that invites you to take one from the top without destabilizing the structure. The shrimp cocktail is the crown jewel of the spread, the one item that signals this is not just any gathering, but an occasion worthy of small luxuries. The shrimp hang over the rim of a glass bowl, pink and plump, tails on, each one cooked to that perfect point between raw and rubbery. Beneath them, ice keeps everything cold. In the centre of the bowl, a smaller dish holds cocktail sauce, red and horseradish sharp, waiting to be deployed. You take a shrimp, dip it carefully, bite through the firm flesh, and taste the ocean mixed with spice. This is extravagance in miniature, the sea delivered to a suburban living room in 1955. The rolled sandwiches are perhaps the most labour-intensive item on the table, and they announce that labour proudly. Each one is made from a slice of white bread, crusts removed, spread with something creamy, probably egg salad or cream cheese with cucumber, then rolled tightly and secured with a toothpick speared through an olive. They sit in neat rows, their spiral interiors visible at each end, cross-sections of care. You take one and unroll it slightly in your mouth, tasting the soft bread, the cool filling, the briny pop of the olive. Someone spent an hour making these, rolling and securing, arranging them just so. You honour that hour by eating slowly, appreciatively. Throughout the evening, the hostess monitors the spread with the vigilance of a general surveying a battlefield. When the devilled eggs dwindle to 3, she disappears into the kitchen and returns with a fresh plate, the eggs still slightly cold from the refrigerator. When the crackers run low, she refills the fan, adjusting them until they sit at the correct angle. She wipes crumbs from the coffee table with a napkin palmed discreetly, erasing evidence of consumption as quickly as it appears. No one takes the last of anything. That would be rude, presumptuous, a violation of the unspoken rule that food should appear abundant even when it is not. The last deviled egg sits alone on its plate for 20 minutes before the hostess quietly removes it, carrying it back to the kitchen where it will be eaten tomorrow by someone's child as an after-school snack. You realise, looking at this spread, that it represents hours of work compressed into bites that disappear in seconds. The boiling and peeling and mixing and piping and arranging and garnishing. The shopping trip to find fresh shrimp. The debate over which crackers to buy. The decision to make the little sandwiches even though they are fiddly and time-consuming, because they look elegant and that matters. This food is not about nutrition. It is about presentation, about creating beauty that can be consumed, about demonstrating care through small, perfect bites. It is edible proof that someone thought about you, planned for you, worked for you. And that knowledge, that awareness of the invisible labour, makes each bite taste richer, more significant, more like a gift than a snack. You take another devilled egg, savour it slowly and silently thank the woman who made it, the woman who is even now circulating through the room with another tray, offering, refilling, ensuring that no one goes hungry, even though hunger was never really the point. Midway through the evening, someone opens the freezer, and there is a brief, terrible silence. The ice trays are empty. The host freezes, his face flickering with panic before he recovers, smiling tightly. "Let me just, improvise," he says, grabbing a dish towel and a hammer from the utility drawer. For the next 5 minutes he chips away at a stubborn block of freezer frost, fashioning ice cubes from desperation and sheer willpower. No one mentions it. No one laughs. Running out of ice at a cocktail party in 1955 is a social failing on par with forgetting someone's name or serving warm gin. Ice is currency. Ice is respect. And tonight, it was almost lost. The guests continue their conversations in the living room, pretending not to notice the muffled sounds coming from the kitchen. The thwack of hammer against ice, the muttered calculations of a man trying to solve a crisis before it becomes visible. The hostess drifts through the room with practiced ease, refilling snack bowls, steering attention away from the kitchen door, her smile never wavering even though she knows her husband is in there, performing emergency triage on their social reputation. Ice in the 1950s is not a luxury, it is a necessity, the foundation upon which every cocktail rests, the element that separates civilized drinking from desperate gulping. A warm martini is not a martini. A room temperature highball is an insult. Ice is what makes the evening crisp, refreshing, sophisticated. Without it, the party deflates like a balloon with a slow leak. Your host planned carefully. He filled 4 ice trays yesterday afternoon, stacking them in the freezer with the precision of someone constructing a house of cards. He calculated conservatively. 8 guests, 2 drinks each on average, generous cubes, extra for refills, 16 drinks, 48 cubes. He thought he was safe. But he did not account for the Caldwells arriving early and staying late. He did not anticipate that the warm evening would make everyone thirstier than usual. He did not foresee Mrs. Henderson's aunt requesting a fresh glass with fresh ice every 20 minutes, because she claimed she could taste the freezer, and he certainly did not expect Mr. Martin to develop a sudden preference for gin on the rocks, a drink that demands more ice than any reasonable cocktail should require. So here he is, in the kitchen, wielding a hammer like a man fighting for his family's honour. He chips at the frost build-up on the freezer walls, coaxing fragments into a bowl, inspecting each piece to determine whether it qualifies as usable. Some chunks are too small, more slush than solid. Others are too large, awkward shapes that will not fit properly in a glass. He sorts through them like a prospector panning for gold, selecting the most respectable pieces and transferring them to the ice bucket with trembling hands. His wife appears in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral. "How are we doing?" she asks quietly, and he hears the weight beneath the question. "We are fine," he says, though they both know fine is an optimistic assessment. She nods, picks up the newly filled ice bucket, and returns to the living room as though nothing has happened, as though ice simply manifests through her goodwill rather than her husband's frantic improvisations. The guests accept their refreshed drinks without comment, unaware of the small domestic drama that just unfolded. The ice clinks pleasantly in their glasses, cold and abundant exactly as it should be. The crisis has been averted. The evening continues smoothly, but your host stands at the bar cart silently vowing that next time, he will freeze double the ice, maybe triple, maybe fill every available container in the house with frozen water, just to ensure he never again experiences the cold sweat of running out. Because in the economy of 1950s, hospitality, ice is not just frozen water, it is preparedness, it is foresight, it is the physical manifestation of caring enough to keep your guests comfortable. And running out even for 5 minutes, even with a successful improvisation, feels like failure, a crack in the facade of effortless hosting that everyone works so hard to maintain. The ice bucket sits on the bar cart now, adequately filled, condensation beading on its silver surface. Your host exhales slowly, his heartbeat returning to normal. He mixes another round of drinks, dropping cubes into glasses with renewed appreciation for their cold, solid presence. No one will ever know how close they came to warm cocktails. No one will ever hear the story of the hammer and the freezer frost. That knowledge will remain between husband and wife, a secret kept to preserve the illusion that hosting is easy, that ice simply appears when needed, that nothing ever goes wrong in a well-run home. The living room fills slowly with a soft haze, cigarette smoke curling lazily toward the ceiling like ghosts of conversations past. Ashtrays appear on every flat surface, glass dishes already collecting lipstick-stained butts and crumpled matchbooks. Your host offers you a cigarette from a silver case, flipping it open with the flourish of someone performing a small magic trick. You accept, even if you do not smoke often, because refusing might seem prudish or odd. Someone lights it for you. You inhale. The smoke mingles with perfume, cologne, and the faint scent of cheese. This is the smell of a 1950s cocktail party. Tobacco, elegance, and a vague awareness that no one has yet connected the dots between cigarettes and lung disease. The cigarette case makes its rounds throughout the evening, passed from guest to guest like a communion offering. The case itself is beautiful, sterling silver with an engraved pattern on the lid, heavy in your palm, satisfying to open and close. Inside, cigarettes stand in neat rows, filtered and unfiltered options available, catering to preferences your host has memorized from previous gatherings. He knows Mr. Martin prefers Lucky Strikes. He knows Mrs. Caldwell smokes Parliaments. He knows the younger couple from down the street will accept whatever is offered because they are still figuring out their own tastes, still deciding what kind of adults they want to be. Lighting someone's cigarette is an act of service, a small intimacy performed casually throughout the room. Your host carries a lighter, sleeken gold, thumb resting on the wheel, ready to spark flame at a moment's notice. He moves through the party offering light, leaning in close, cupping his hand around the flame to protect it from the ceiling fan's breeze. The gesture is courtly, old-fashioned, a remnant of an era when such small courtesies meant something. The women smoke differently than the men. They hold their cigarettes delicately between index and middle fingers, elbows bent at elegant angles, wrists cocked just so. They exhale slowly, smoke streaming from pursed lips painted in shades of coral and rose. Their lipstick leaves perfect imprints on the filters, small kiss marks in various shades, evidence collected in ashtrays like archaeological records of who was here, who smoked what, who lingered longest. The men smoke with their whole hands, cigarettes gripped between thumb and fingers, gestured with for emphasis during stories. They tap ash with authority, flicking the cigarette over the ashtray with practiced casualness. They let cigarettes dangle from their lips while mixing drinks or adjusting the record player, squinting against the smoke that drifts into their eyes, unbothered by the minor discomfort. The ashtrays themselves are everywhere, stationed strategically so that no guest has to walk more than a few steps to find one. Crystal ashtrays on the coffee table, ceramic ones on the side tables, a heavy glass ashtray on the mantel. The hostess empties them periodically, discreetly, carrying them to the kitchen two at a time, dumping the contents into the trash, wiping them clean with a damp cloth, returning them to their positions before anyone notices they were gone. It is one of her many invisible tasks, maintaining the appearance that ashtrays simply stay clean through the force of good intentions. The smoke itself becomes part of the room's atmosphere, a visible layer that catches the lamplight, softening everything, giving the evening a dreamy quality. Faces appear slightly blurred through the haze, voices sound more intimate. The whole scene takes on the soft focus glamour of a movie. No one coughs, no one complains, no one opens a window. This is how adults socialize, wreathed in smoke, sophisticated and worldly and slowly, invisibly, coating their lungs with tar. Cigarettes punctuate conversation. Someone makes a point and takes a drag. Someone else laughs and taps ash. The rhythm of smoking becomes synchronized with the rhythm of talking, the two activities intertwined until it is hard to imagine one without the other. How would you emphasize a statement without a cigarette to gesture with? How would you pause thoughtfully without an inhale to fill the silence? How would you signal the end of a story without stubbing out your cigarette with finality? The matchbooks scattered across the surfaces are small advertisements for local businesses, one from the steakhouse downtown, another from the country club, a third from the new hotel on the highway. Your host collects them, brings them home from dinners and events, displays them casually as proof of a life well lived, places visited, experiences accumulated. They sit in small piles, ready to be struck, their sulphur smell adding another layer to the room's complex aroma. By evening's end, the ashtrays are full, small pyramids of crushed filters and ash, evidence of hours spent in companionable consumption. The air is thick, almost chewy, with smoke. Tomorrow the hostess will wake early to air out the house, opening every window, spraying air freshener, washing the curtains that have absorbed a week's worth of tobacco in a single night. But tonight no one thinks about tomorrow. Tonight smoking is not a habit or an addiction. It is participation, inclusion, a visible sign that you are relaxed, comfortable, part of the group. You smoke because everyone smokes. You smoke because refusing would make you strange. You smoke because that is what civilized adults do at cocktail parties in 1955, and no one has suggested there might be any reason to stop. You're midway through your martini when your host materializes at your side, gesturing toward your glass with a practiced smile. "Let me freshen that up for you," he says, not waiting for an answer. In the 1950s, an empty glass is a failure of hospitality, a visible sign that the host has not been paying attention. So drinks are topped off constantly, proactively, often before you have even decided whether you want another. You accept the refill because refusing might seem rude, might suggest you're not enjoying yourself, might imply you have somewhere better to be. And so your glass remains perpetually full, a small conspiracy between you and your host to keep the evening flowing smoothly. Your host has developed a sixth sense for drinks nearing their end. He glances across the room while mixing someone else's cocktail and somehow registers that your glass has reached the halfway point. He finishes the current task, wipes his hands on a bar towel, and appears at your elbow as though summoned by telepathy. "Another martini, or would you like to try something different?" he asks. And the question is posed as though your answer matters deeply to him, as though his entire evening's success hinges on keeping you properly hydrated with alcohol. You accept because the social pressure to accept is enormous. Saying no thank you requires justification. Are you driving? Are you feeling unwell? Do you not like the drinks? Each possible reason for refusal carries weight, demands explanation, creates a small moment of awkwardness that disrupts the evening's flow. It is easier, simpler, more socially acceptable to simply smile and say yes. Another would be lovely. The refills come with remarkable frequency. You have barely taken 3 sips from your fresh drink when you notice your host hovering again, watching your glass level with the intensity of a meteorologist tracking a storm. He is not hovering in an obvious way, not standing beside you staring, but his awareness is constant, peripheral, omnipresent. He tracks every guest's consumption, maintaining a mental map of who needs what, who drinks quickly, who sips slowly, who accepts every offer and who occasionally declines. The hostess assists in this surveillance, though her method is different. She circulates with a tray of fresh drinks already prepared, offering them preemptively. You still have half a drink, but she appears with a full glass, suggesting you might want to switch, might want to try the one with the lemon twist instead of the olive. The message is clear. We made this for you. It would be rude to refuse, so you take it, now holding 2 drinks, wondering what to do with the original glass, which the hostess solves by plucking it smoothly from your hand and disappearing toward the kitchen. Some guests embrace this system enthusiastically. Mr. Martin has maintained a constant state of holding a full drink for 2 hours, each refill accepted with a cheerful nod, his voice growing slightly louder with each round. Mrs. Caldwell nurses her drinks more slowly but never refuses when offered. Her glass somehow always half full, perpetually topped off before it can become half empty. The younger couple from down the street seem slightly overwhelmed by the constant offers. They exchange glances when the host approaches again, silent communication passing between them. Should we? Are we drinking too much? Is this normal? They are new to the neighbourhood, still learning the rhythms of these gatherings, unsure whether 3 drinks in 90 minutes is standard or excessive. They accept the refills because everyone else does, because fitting in requires mimicry, because saying no would mark them as different. You realise somewhere around your 3rd drink that you have lost track of your consumption. The constant refills have made counting impossible. You're not drunk, not exactly, but you are definitely looser, warmer, more inclined to laugh at stories that are not particularly funny. Your tongue feels slightly thick. Your edges have softened. You are, in the parlance of the era, pleasantly buzzed. That perfect state between sober and obviously intoxicated, the zone your host has been calibrating all evening. The strategy is deliberate. A party where people drink too slowly feels stiff, formal, uncomfortable. A party where people drink too much becomes sloppy, dangerous, memorable for the wrong reasons. The host's job is to maintain the middle ground, keeping glasses full enough that everyone relaxes but not so full that anyone loses control. It is a delicate calculation, adjusting for body weight, tolerance, personality, the time of evening. No one discusses this calculation openly. No one acknowledges that the host is essentially bartender, therapist, and traffic controller, managing the room's collective intoxication level with the skill of a conductor managing an orchestra. The guests simply enjoy their full glasses, their pleasant warmth, their increasing willingness to share stories and laugh at jokes. Your host appears again, sees your glass is still 3/4 full, nods with satisfaction, and moves to the next guest. You're maintaining the right pace. You're drinking enough to be social, but not so much that you're becoming a concern. You are, in other words, being a good guest, participating in the collective agreement to stay buzzed but not drunk, relaxed but not sloppy, social but not confessional. You sip your drink and watch the room, noticing how everyone holds their glass at the same level of fullness, how the evening's mood has shifted from polite to genuinely warm, how laughter comes easier now, how conversations flow without the earlier stiffness. The constant refills have done their job. The party has loosened without unravelling, and tomorrow, when you wake with a mild headache and hazy memories, you will not be able to say exactly how many drinks you had, only that your glass was never empty, and somehow that felt like the most generous hospitality imaginable. Someone lingers near the record player, flipping through the stack of albums with the focus of a librarian cataloguing rare manuscripts. The music must never stop. Silence at a cocktail party feels awkward, heavy, like someone forgot their lines in a play. So the records are changed carefully, the needle lowered gently, and the room fills again with smooth jazz, big band standards, or crooners promising love eternal. The person managing the music is performing an invisible service, one that no one will thank them for, but everyone will notice if it stops. They are the unsung hero of the evening, the keeper of the soundtrack, the guardian against uncomfortable quiet. Tonight, this duty has fallen to Mr. Henderson's younger brother, visiting from out of town, who accepted the assignment with the solemn understanding that it is both honour and burden. He stands beside the console, one hand resting lightly on the cabinet, the other holding a drink he has not touched in 40 minutes. His attention is divided between the conversations happening around him and the album currently spinning, his internal clock calculating exactly when the final song will end, giving him enough time to select the next record, remove it from its sleeve, and position it on the turntable before silence descends. The stack beside him represents careful curation. The host spent an hour yesterday afternoon selecting these albums, arranging them in order, creating a progression that will carry the evening from cocktails to dinner to late-night lingering. The first album is light, instrumental, establishing mood without demanding attention. Duke Ellington, something from the mid-40s, familiar enough to feel comfortable, sophisticated enough to signal that this household has taste. As the first album nears its end, the brother lifts the needle with practiced care, holding his breath, praying he does not scratch the record or jolt the arm too roughly. He returns the album to its sleeve, sets it aside, reaches for the next selection. Frank Sinatra, Songs for Swingin' Lovers, a classic that will please everyone, offend no one, keep the mood elevated without overpowering conversation. He slides the record from its sleeve, holding it by the edges, fingerprints forbidden, and positions it on the turntable, lowering the needle with the delicacy of a surgeon making an incision. The first notes fill the brief silence, and the room exhales collectively, unaware it had been holding its breath. Conversations resume without missing a beat. The brother relaxes slightly, takes a sip of his neglected drink and resets his internal timer. 42 minutes until the next change. Throughout the evening he performs this ritual repeatedly, each transition executed with increasing confidence. He begins to anticipate the room's mood, reading the energy, adjusting his selections accordingly. When conversations grow louder, more animated, he chooses something with a stronger beat, music that can hold its own against competing voices. When the party softens, guests pairing off into quieter clusters, he selects something gentler, allowing the music to cradle rather than energize. He learns to watch for the moment when the needle approaches the innermost grooves, that telltale change in sound quality that signals the album is nearly finished. He learns to read the room's attention, knowing when he can step away briefly to flip through the remaining albums and when he must stay vigilant, ready to prevent even 5 seconds of silence. The guests are oblivious to his careful work. They assume the music simply continues, as though the record player operates on some kind of magical perpetual motion. They do not see him standing there, hour after hour, managing their soundtrack, making decisions that shape the evening's emotional arc without anyone noticing. He's like the lighting crew in a theatre, essential but invisible, succeeding precisely to the degree that his work goes unnoticed. Once, disaster nearly strikes. An album ends abruptly, a song shorter than he anticipated, and silence drops over the room like a weighted blanket. Conversations stutter. People glance around uncertainly. He feels panic rising in his chest as he fumbles for the next record, his hands suddenly clumsy, the sleeve refusing to release its contents. 5 seconds pass. 7. 10. Finally, the record slides free, he positions it frantically, lowers the needle, and music floods back in. The conversations resume. The moment passes. No one mentions it, but he feels the weight of his failure, the brief rupture in the evening's seamless flow. Later, as the party winds down, the host approaches with a grateful nod. "You did a great job with the music tonight," he says quietly, and the brother feels a rush of relief, validation for the invisible labour he has performed. He stayed sober while everyone else drank. He remained standing while everyone else lounged. He watched the clock while everyone else forgot time, and now, finally, someone has noticed. The final album plays, something slow and mellow, Nat King Cole, perhaps, signalling without words that the evening is ending, that it is time to start thinking about coats and goodbyes. The brother lets this one play to its natural conclusion, the last notes fading into silence that feels appropriate now, earned, a peaceful ending rather than an awkward gap. He returns the final album to its sleeve, stacks them all carefully, and sets them beside the record player, ready for the host to return them to their proper places tomorrow. He has performed his duty faithfully, kept the music flowing, maintained the mood, prevented disaster through constant vigilance. No one will remember his contribution specifically, but everyone will remember that the music was perfect, that the evening had the right soundtrack, that something about the party just felt right. And perhaps, he thinks as he finally finishes his warm drink, that is the highest compliment an invisible worker can receive. At some point during the evening, the hostess's children appear in the doorway, freshly bathed and dressed in pyjamas, hair combed, faces scrubbed. They are paraded through the living room like small, adorable exhibits, waving shyly at the guests who coo and compliment appropriately. "What darling children," someone says. "So well behaved," another adds. The children smile politely, accept the praise, and then, at a subtle signal from their mother, disappear upstairs to their rooms, where they will remain for the rest of the night. Cocktail parties are adult territory. Children are acknowledged, appreciated, and then gently removed, like decorative elements that have fulfilled their purpose. The appearance is carefully orchestrated. The hostess spent 15 minutes before the guests arrived getting her children ready for this moment, this brief performance of domestic perfection. She supervised baths, combed hair, selected the most presentable pyjamas, the ones without stains or holes, the ones that make her children look like they stepped from a department store catalogue. She coached them gently on what to say. Just say goodnight. Wave nicely. If someone asks you a question, answer politely. And then, when I nod, go upstairs quietly. No running, no shouting. Just walk up like the civilized little people I know you can be. The children understand their role in this theatre. They are props, evidence of their parents' successful family life, proof that this household produces not just parties but also well-adjusted offspring. They stand in the doorway for a moment, taking in the scene, the adults with their drinks and cigarettes, the room glowing with lamplight, the smell of perfume and smoke and something baking. The older child, a girl of 7, steps forward first. "Good night, everyone," she says clearly, and the room responds with a chorus of good nights, sweet dreams, sleep well. She curtsies slightly, a gesture her mother taught her, and several guests gasp with delight at this charming display of old-fashioned manners. Behind her, the younger child, a boy of 4, waves enthusiastically, less rehearsed, more genuine, his pyjama top slightly askew despite his mother's recent adjustments. The guests indulge in the kind of conversation adults always have about children in the children's presence, speaking as though the children are fascinating but not quite human. They have grown so much. I remember when she was just a baby. He has his father's eyes. She's going to be a heartbreaker someday. The children stand patiently, absorbing these observations, learning early that being admired is part of their social responsibility. Mrs. Martin approaches, bending down to the girl's level. "And what grade are you in now, sweetie?" she asks, her voice taking on that particular tone adults use when addressing children. Slightly louder, slightly slower, as though talking to someone hard of hearing. "Second grade," the girl replies. "Oh, second grade," Mrs. Martin repeats, as though this information is profound. "You must be learning so much," the boy, emboldened by his sister's success, pipes up unprompted. "I can count to 100, he announces proudly. The room erupts in appreciative murmurs. "How wonderful! What a smart boy! Your parents must be so proud." The hostess smiles, a mixture of genuine pride and mild anxiety that her children will now refuse to leave, encouraged by the attention. But she has trained them well. After a few more exchanges, a few more compliments, she catches her daughter's eye and gives the subtlest nod. The girl takes her brother's hand. "Good night, everyone," she says again, and leads him toward the stairs. The boy waves over his shoulder one more time before disappearing around the corner. The guests watch them go with fond smiles, already returning to their adult conversations before the children have reached the top step. That is the magic of the ritual. The children are present just long enough to be charming, brief enough not to become disruptive, removed before anyone tires of them, or before they might do something unpredictable that would embarrass their parents. Upstairs, the children settle into their rooms, the sounds of the party drifting up through the floorboards. They can hear laughter, music, the murmur of adult voices engaged in mysterious adult conversations. The older child reads for a while, listening to the sounds below, wondering what makes adult parties so important that children must be excluded. The younger child falls asleep almost immediately, exhausted by his brief performance. The hostess checks on them once during the evening, slipping upstairs between her many duties, finding them both sleeping peacefully, their earlier appearance already half forgotten by the guests below. She pulls their blankets up, kisses their foreheads, and returns to the party, resuming her role as gracious hostess, the children now tucked away like secrets, present in the house but absent from the evening. This is how children exist in 1950s cocktail parties, evidence of successful adulthood, briefly displayed, then carefully stored away until the adults are finished with their important business of drinking and smoking and maintaining the appearance that life is elegant, manageable, perfectly under control. The children serve their purpose, providing a moment of sweetness, a pause in the adult conversations, a reminder that this household is complete, functional, blessed, and then they vanish, allowing the adults to continue their own carefully scripted performances, uninterrupted by the unpredictable honesty of childhood. You find yourself in a small cluster near the bookshelf, voices lowered conspiratorially. Someone mentions a neighbour who is going through something, the phrase delivered with raised eyebrows and a meaningful pause. Someone else adds that they heard things have been difficult, nodding sagely. No one says divorce, no one says affair, no one says bankruptcy or breakdown or any of the words that would make the situation too real, too uncomfortable. Instead, the gossip flows in soft euphemisms, in careful phrases that allow everyone to understand without anyone having to confront the actual truth. It is gossip cushioned by kindness, or at least by the appearance of kindness, which in the 1950s is often the same thing. The conversation begins innocently enough. Mrs. Caldwell mentions she saw the Petersons' house is up for sale. "Oh, really?" Mrs. Martin replies, her voice lifting with interest. "That is surprising. I thought they just remodeled the kitchen." "They did, Mrs." Caldwell confirms and lets the information hang in the air, pregnant with implication. "Just last spring." They installed those new cabinets everyone was talking about. A pause follows, everyone in the circle calculating what this means. A house listed for sale less than a year after an expensive remodel suggests something has gone wrong, something significant enough to override the financial logic of staying put. But no one asks directly. No one says, "What happened?" Instead, they wait for information to be offered, volunteered, delivered in the careful language of plausible deniability. "I heard," Mrs. Henderson says slowly, choosing her words with the precision of someone defusing a bomb, "that Mr. Peterson has been spending quite a bit of time in the city lately. For business," she adds quickly, the phrase both explaining and suggesting more than it explains. The group nods. Business. Of course. Business that requires overnight stays. Business that happens during hours when most businesses are closed. Business that has Mrs. Peterson looking tired and thin at the grocery store, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Someone mentions, in an even quieter voice, that the Johnsons down the street have been having difficulties as well. Financial difficulties, the phrase delivered with the kind of hushed reverence usually reserved for terminal diagnoses. No one asks how bad the difficulties are. No one inquires about the specifics. Financial difficulties could mean anything from maxed-out credit cards to impending foreclosure, and the ambiguity is intentional, allowing everyone to know something without knowing too much, to participate in the knowledge without bearing the burden of concrete facts. The conversation shifts to the Harpers, whose teenage son has been in some kind of trouble. The details remain vague. Trouble at school, someone says. Or maybe it was something with the police, someone else adds uncertainly. No one seems to know exactly what happened, or if they know, they are not saying. And so the gossip hovers in the realm of suggestion, dark but undefined, troubling but ultimately unknowable. Throughout these exchanges, the group maintains an expression of concern, voices soft and sympathetic, as though the gossip is motivated purely by care for their neighbours, rather than by the delicious satisfaction of knowing things about other people's lives. We should really invite her to lunch, someone says about Mrs. Peterson. Let her know we are thinking of her. Everyone agrees this would be kind, though no one volunteers to organise it, and the suggestion itself serves primarily to frame the gossip as compassion rather than curiosity. The euphemisms pile up, creating a language of suggestion and implication, going through a rough patch, having some challenges, working through some things, dealing with a situation. Each phrase is a small shield, protecting the speaker from the accusation of being unkind while still allowing them to participate in the circulation of other people's private pain. You notice how carefully the information is parcelled out, each person contributing a small piece, no one claiming to know the full story, everyone maintaining plausible deniability about the source of their knowledge. I heard through someone at church. My sister mentioned something. I ran into her cousin at the pharmacy. The gossip is laundered through layers of removal, cleaned of malice, presented as mere facts that happen to be overheard rather than actively sought. No one acknowledges the pleasure in this exchange, the small thrill of knowing what others do not know, of being inside a circle of information, of participating in the invisible network that maps the neighbourhood's secrets and failures. Instead, everyone maintains an expression of gentle concern, voices pitched at the frequency of sympathy, the performance of care so convincing that perhaps they even believe it themselves. The conversation eventually drifts to safer topics, the gossip metabolized and absorbed, ready to be passed along at the next gathering, growing slightly more detailed or slightly more vague depending on who tells it. The truth increasingly difficult to locate beneath layers of euphemism and concern. But for now, the group breaks apart, returning to other conversations, carrying with them the small satisfaction of having shared something significant, without ever having said anything specific, of having gossiped without technically gossiping, of having participated in the neighbourhood's invisible surveillance system while maintaining the appearance of kindness, discretion, and appropriate concern. The evening is winding down, conversations soften, yawns are stifled. Someone glances at their watch and murmurs, "Oh my, is it really that late?" This is the signal. The first guests begin gathering coats, thanking the hosts, complimenting the evening one final time. You watch carefully, waiting for the right moment. Leaving too early suggests you are not having fun. Staying too late suggests you are oblivious or overly comfortable. The sweet spot is somewhere in the middle, part of the second wave of departures, neither the first out the door nor the last clinging to the evening. You rise, smooth your dress, and move toward the hostess with a warm smile, ready to execute the perfect exit. The timing of departure is perhaps the most delicate negotiation of the entire evening. Get it wrong, and you risk social embarrassment that will linger far longer than the party itself. Leave in the first wave, among the initial defectors at 9:30, and you communicate that the party was merely acceptable, something to be endured rather than enjoyed. Stay past 10:30, when the hosts are visibly wilting, and you announce yourself as someone lacking social awareness, unable to read the room, possibly desperate for company. You have been tracking the room's energy for the past 30 minutes, noting the subtle shifts that signal the evening's decline. The conversations have grown quieter, less animated, more likely to include phrases like, "We should really do this again," and "It has been such a lovely time." The hostess has stopped refreshing snack bowls. The host has begun wiping down the bar cart between mixing drinks. The music has softened to something contemplative, almost melancholy, the sonic equivalent of dimming the lights. The Caldwells make the first move at 9:45, initiating what will become a 20-minute cascade of departures. They stand, brushing crumbs from their clothes, and approach the hosts with grateful smiles. "We should get going," Mr. Caldwell says, and the phrase is delivered with just the right mixture of reluctance and necessity. "We have church in the morning," Mrs. Caldwell adds, providing the socially acceptable justification for leaving a party that has not officially ended. The hosts respond with the required protests. "Oh, are you sure? It's still early." But the protests are gentle, pro forma, lacking the genuine insistence that would characterize an earlier departure. The Caldwells collect their coats, exchange final pleasantries, and slip out into the night, their exit creating a small vacuum that makes staying suddenly feel optional rather than obligatory. You wait. Not yet. The first wave is for the elderly, the parents of young children, the people with unassailable excuses for early departure. You're none of these things, so you sip your drink, nod along to a story Mr. Martin is telling, and watch for the next cue. It comes at 10:15 when the Martins themselves stand, glancing at each other with the silent communication of a long marriage. "This has been wonderful," Mrs. Martin says to the room generally, and you recognise the farewell preamble, the opening line of the departure script. The hosts move toward them, and you see your window opening. You finish your drink, set the glass down carefully, and catch your spouse's eye. A small nod passes between you. Time to go. You both stand, and immediately the hostess notices, her attention drawn by the movement. You join the small cluster forming near the coats, the critical mass of levers that makes departure feel like a collective decision, rather than an individual rejection of the party. The goodbyes are warm but efficient. You thank the hosts, compliment specific details of the evening, the delicious hors d'oeuvres, the perfect drinks, the wonderful company. Everything was absolutely lovely, you say, and mean it. The hostess beams, exhausted but gratified. "I am so glad you could come," she replies, gripping your hand with genuine warmth. "We will have to have you over again soon." You both know this promise is sincere but non-specific, an expression of goodwill rather than a binding commitment. Your spouse shakes the host's hand, exchanges a final joke, and you both move toward the door. Two other couples are leaving simultaneously, creating a small traffic jam in the foyer that feels appropriate, collective, safe. No one is leaving alone. No one is staying alone. The party is ending naturally, organically, exactly as it should. Outside, the night air is cool and refreshing after hours in the warm, smoke-filled living room. You hear the door close gently behind you, the party continuing inside but already fading, already becoming memory. You climbed into your car and notice one couple still lingering on the porch, saying their goodbyes, and one car still parked in the driveway behind yours, suggesting at least one couple remains inside. Perfect. You left neither too early nor too late. You threaded the needle. As you drive home, you feel the satisfaction of a social obligation successfully fulfilled. You attended. You participated. You stayed the appropriate length of time. You left gracefully, neither fleeing nor overstaying, your departure timed with the precision of someone who understands the unwritten rules, who can read the room, who knows that in 1950s social life knowing when to leave is just as important as knowing when to arrive. You stand in the foyer, coat draped over your arm, as the hostess thanks you for coming with a warmth that feels both genuine and exhausted. "It was such a lovely evening," you say. "Everything was perfect." She waves a hand dismissively, deflecting again. "Oh, I am just so glad you could make it." You hug briefly, carefully, mindful of lipstick and hair. Your host appears to shake your hand or clap your shoulder. "Drive safely," he says. "See you soon." You step out into the cool night air, and as the door closes gently behind you, you hear the faint murmur of the remaining guests inside, the party continuing without you, as it should. You have exited gracefully, and that, in itself, is a small victory. The goodbye is not a simple transaction. It is a ritual with its own rhythm, its own requirements, its own opportunities for misstep. You cannot simply wave and disappear. That would be abrupt, rude, suggestive of someone fleeing rather than departing. Instead, you must linger in the foyer long enough to demonstrate that leaving saddens you, that you wish you could stay, that only external obligations are pulling you away from this delightful gathering. The hostess holds your coat as you slip your arms into the sleeves, a small service she performs even though you are perfectly capable of putting on your own coat. But allowing her this gesture is part of the dance, accepting her care one final time, acknowledging her role as nurturer even in this moment of departure. You adjust the collar, button it halfway, and turn back to face her. "I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed this evening," you say, and the phrasing is important. Not "I enjoyed this," but "I enjoyed this so much I cannot adequately express it." The hyperbole signalling deep appreciation. The food was absolutely delicious, you add, because complimenting specific elements demonstrates you were paying attention, you were present, you were not merely enduring the party but actively appreciating it. She accepts the compliments with practiced modesty. You are too kind. I am just so happy you could be here. Really, it meant so much to have you. This exchange of appreciation and deflection could continue indefinitely, each person trying to out-grateful the other, but social convention limits it to 2 or 3 rounds before requiring resolution. Your spouse has been conducting a parallel goodbye with the host, their conversation touching on plans to play golf soon, maybe grab lunch, stay in touch. The men shake hands with that particular firmness that communicates respect, friendship, masculine bond. The host claps your spouse's shoulder. Really glad you could make it, he says. Next time we will have to get together at our place, your spouse replies, and the promise hangs in the air, sincere but unscheduled, an intention without a date. You notice the remaining guests watching this farewell performance from the living room, some still seated, others beginning to gather their own things, calculating whether they too should join this exodus. Your departure has given them permission to consider leaving, has established that the party has entered its final phase. The hostess walks you to the door, a hand resting lightly on your arm, a gesture of affection and guidance. Outside, the porch light glows warmly, illuminating the steps you will descend back into your regular life. The night is quiet except for the distant sound of a dog barking, a car passing on the next street over, the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. Thank you again, you say one final time at the threshold, because one thank you is insufficient, 2 is polite, 3 is appropriate for a truly lovely evening. The hostess squeezes your arm gently. Drive safely, she says, and you hear in her voice both the warmth of genuine care and the relief of someone who can see the finish line of her evening's performance. You descend the porch steps carefully, your spouse beside you, and turn back for one final wave. The hostess and host stand framed in the doorway, backlit by the warm glow of their living room waving back. You smile. They smile. Everyone holds the moment just long enough for it to feel meaningful, but not so long that it becomes awkward. Then you turn toward your car, and they close the door gently, the soft click marking the official end of your attendance. You walk across their lawn, the grass slightly damp with evening dew, and climb into your car. Through the window, you can see the silhouettes of the remaining guests still visible in the living room, the party continuing in your absence, proof that you departed at exactly the right moment, neither too essential to leave nor so peripheral that your leaving went unnoticed. Your spouse starts the engine and you pull away from the curb, watching the house recede in the rearview mirror, its windows glowing like a small beacon in the dark suburban street. You performed your exit perfectly. You expressed gratitude. You complimented sincerely. You hugged warmly but briefly. You departed neither too rushed nor too lingering. You left them with the impression that you had a wonderful time, that you appreciated their hospitality, that you will cherish the memory of this evening. And now, driving home through quiet streets, you allow yourself to relax fully for the first time all evening, the social performance finally complete, the goodbye executed with the precision of someone who understands the 1950s social life. How you leave is just as important as how you arrive, and getting it right is the final test of whether you truly understand the rules. The door closes, the last car pulls away, the house falls silent. Your hostess stands in the middle of the living room, surveying the wreckage. Ashtrays overflowing, glasses abandoned on every surface, crumpled napkins, crumbs, melted ice. Her husband loosens his tie and exhales. Well, that went well, he says. She nods, too tired to respond, and sinks onto the sofa, kicking off her heels with a sigh so deep it could crack the foundation. For the past 4 hours she has been a gracious, smiling, flawless hostess. Now, finally, she can be human again, exhausted, relieved, proud. She closes her eyes for just a moment, and in that silence, she allows herself to feel the weight of what she has just accomplished. Her feet throb with a pain so specific she could describe it in poetry, the burning along the arch, the pinch at the heel where the shoe rubbed despite band-aids, the ache in the balls of her feet, from standing, circulating, never sitting, never resting, for hours upon hours. She looks down at them, red and swollen, and feels both sympathy and resentment for these feet that carried her through the performance. The living room so carefully arranged this afternoon, Now looks like a beautiful woman after a long night, still recognizable but definitely showing wear. The sofa cushions are askew. The throw pillows have migrated to unexpected locations. Someone's napkin is wedged between the armrest and the seat cushion. A water ring mars the coffee table despite the coasters she stationed every 6 inches. She counts glasses silently from where she sits. 7 on the coffee table, 3 on the mantel, 2 on the bookshelf, 1 perched precariously on the windowsill. How that one got there she cannot imagine. Another on the side table, another on the floor beside the armchair. 14 glasses, each one requiring washing, drying, careful storage. The ashtrays are small mountains of evidence. She can see lipstick prints in various shades, crushed cigarettes at various angles, ash dusted across surfaces she will need to wipe carefully tomorrow. The smell of smoke has settled into the curtains, the upholstery, her own hair. Tomorrow she will air everything out, will wash and spray and scrub, but tonight she simply sits in it, too tired to care. Her husband lowers himself into the armchair across from her, his own exhaustion evident in the way he moves, slower than usual, heavier. His collar is unbuttoned, his sleeves are rolled up. The transformation from host to human is happening to him too, though she notes with some bitterness that his transformation involves less pain, fewer sore muscles, no swollen feet. "Do you think people had a good time?" she asks, and hears the vulnerability in her own voice, the need for reassurance after hours of performance. He looks at her with genuine affection. "Are you kidding? It was perfect. Everyone said so." She absorbs this, lets it settle into her tired bones, allows herself to feel proud. They sit in silence for a long moment, the house ticking and settling around them, returning to its natural state now that it is no longer required to be a stage. The refrigerator hums. The clock on the mantel chimes once, marking the half hour. 10:30. Not late by some standards, but after the day she's had, it feels like midnight. She knows she should get up, should start clearing glasses, should at least empty the ashtrays before the smell gets worse. But she cannot move. Her body has decided unilaterally that sitting is permanent now, that standing is a young woman's game, that she has earned this moment of collapse. Her husband watches her, recognizing the depth of her exhaustion. "Leave it," he says gently. "We will deal with it tomorrow." She shakes her head. "The glasses have to be washed tonight. You know that. If we leave them, they will spot." He sighs, knowing she's right, knowing that even in exhaustion she will not compromise on the standards that make their gathering successful. "I will help," he offers, and she feels a rush of gratitude for this man who understands, at least partially, what she has just endured. They sit for another moment, gathering strength, and then, slowly, painfully, she rises from the sofa, her feet screaming protest, and begins gathering glasses. Together they move through the room, collecting evidence of the evening, carrying load after load to the kitchen. The glasses pile up beside the sink, the ashtrays are emptied into the trash. Crumpled napkins are collected. The coffee table is wiped down. Cushions are fluffed and returned to their proper positions. Through it all, she feels the satisfaction of completion settling over her exhaustion. She did it. She hosted a successful party. No one went thirsty. No one went hungry. No one was bored or uncomfortable or neglected. Every guest was welcomed, tended to, sent home happy. She created an evening people will remember, will reference at future gatherings, will use as a standard against which to measure their own hosting attempts. Her husband fills the sink with hot soapy water and begins washing glasses while she dries them, and in this quiet domestic partnership the final act of the evening unfolds. They work in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts, processing the evening, replaying moments, noting what worked and what they will adjust next time. When the last glass is dried and put away, when the ashtrays are cleaned and returned to their cupboard, when the living room is restored to something approximating order, she finally allows herself to climb the stairs toward bed. Her feet protest each step. Her back aches. Her face is tired from smiling, but she's proud. She's relieved. She is finally done. Your host stands at the sink, running warm water over martini glasses smudged with lipstick and fingerprints. His wife insists they can deal with the rest tomorrow, but the glasses, those have to be washed tonight. It is one of those unspoken rules of hosting. You can leave the vacuuming, the dusting, the rearranging of furniture, but you cannot leave dirty glassware sitting out overnight. It feels wrong. disrespectful somehow to the ritual they have just performed. So he scrubs gently, drying each glass with a soft towel, stacking them carefully in the cupboard, restoring order one piece at a time. It is meditative, this final act of the evening, a quiet return to normalcy. The water runs hot over his hands, almost too hot, but he welcomes the sensation, the proof that he is still present, still functional, despite the exhaustion creeping through his limbs. He adds a generous squirt of dish soap, watching it foam and bubble, transforming the sink into a small sea of cleanliness. The first glass slides into the water, lipstick staining its rim in a shade of coral that belongs to Mrs. Martin, though he does not know this, only sees the evidence of her evening, the mark she left on his glassware. He washes carefully, methodically, turning each glass under the water, using a soft cloth to wipe away the smudges, the fingerprints, the residue of cocktails consumed hours ago. Some glasses still smell faintly of gin, others carry the sweet ghost of vermouth. One smells distinctly of the whiskey Mr. Henderson drank neat, his usual order predictable as sunrise. His wife appears beside him with another load. 3 more glasses she found hiding in unexpected places. One was on the bookshelf, nestled between volumes they have never read but display because educated people have bookshelves. Another was on the windowsill, abandoned by someone who set it down to gesture emphatically during a story and forgot to retrieve it. The third was in the bathroom, which raises questions neither of them want to explore. They work in companionable silence, the kind of silence that comes after hours of noise, of laughter, of conversations that required constant attention and energy. The quiet feels earned, peaceful, a reward for duties fulfilled. She dries while he washes, their movements synchronized from years of performing this same ritual, this same ending to countless evenings of entertaining. Some of the glasses are stubborn. Lipstick clings despite scrubbing, leaving faint ghost prints that he attacks with increasing determination. His wife notices his frustration and gently takes the glass from him. "Let me," she says, applying a drop of dish soap directly to the mark and rubbing with her thumb. The lipstick surrenders, and she rinses the glass clean, holding it up to the light to confirm its clarity before handing it to him to dry. The drying requires its own care. He uses a soft cotton towel, one designated specifically for glassware, turned and folded to present a fresh, dry surface for each piece. He dries the inside first, twisting the towel gently to reach the bottom, then polishes the outside, removing any water spots that might mar the crystal's clarity. Each glass is inspected briefly, held up to the overhead light, confirming that it is clean, spot-free, ready to be stored until the next gathering. The cupboard above the sink holds their entertaining glassware, separate from the everyday glasses they use for milk and juice and water. These are special, reserved for occasions, for guests, for moments that require something beyond the ordinary. He stacks them carefully, martini glasses on the top shelf, highballs on the second, old-fashioned glasses below. Each stack is stable, each glass touching its neighbour lightly, the arrangement allowing him to retrieve any glass without disturbing the others. As he works, his mind drifts through the evening, replaying moments. The joke that landed particularly well. The moment he had to chip ice from the freezer, heart pounding with mild panic. The compliment Mrs. Caldwell gave about his martinis, which had pleased him more than he wanted to admit. The satisfaction of seeing everyone relaxed, enjoying themselves, the party achieving that elusive quality of warmth and ease he always aims for but cannot quite engineer. His wife finishes drying the last glass and sets it on the counter with a small sigh of completion. "That is all of them," she says, her voice carrying relief and lingering exhaustion. He nods, drying his hands on the towel, and together they survey the kitchen. The counters wiped down, the sink empty, the glasses put away. The rest of the house can wait until morning. The vacuum can sleep in its closet. The furniture can remain slightly askew, but the glasses, those are done, properly, completely, as they should be. He turns off the kitchen light and they move toward the stairs, his arm finding its way around her shoulders, her body leaning into his with the comfortable weight of shared exhaustion. They climbed slowly, neither speaking, both processing the evening in their own ways, both satisfied that they have, once again, successfully performed the intricate dance of hosting, of welcoming people into their home and sending them away happy. Upstairs, the house settles into nighttime quiet, the party officially over, the evidence cleaned or at least contained, ready to be dealt with tomorrow. But the glasses, those pristine soldiers standing at attention in their cupboard, are already prepared for the next gathering, the next evening of hospitality, the next opportunity to open their home and create an illusion of effortless elegance that will require every ounce of effort they possess. For now, though, they sleep, clean and waiting, as proper glassware should. Monday morning, the neighbourhood is buzzing. At the grocery store, at the mailbox, over backyard fences, people are still talking about Saturday night. "Did you see how beautiful her table looked?" someone whispers. "And those deviled eggs, absolutely delicious." Someone else mentions the music, the drinks, the way the host told that one funny story. Your party is being dissected, analysed, remembered. In some kitchens, it is praised. In others, it is quietly compared to other parties, measured against unspoken standards. But it is being talked about, and in the social economy of the 1950s, that is success. You threw a party, people remember. You did something right. Mrs. Caldwell runs into Mrs. Henderson at the produce section, both of them squeezing cantaloupes with the serious concentration of surgeons evaluating organs. They exchange pleasantries about the weather before Mrs. Caldwell leans in slightly, her voice dropping to that particular frequency reserved for meaningful conversation. "Saturday was just lovely," she says, and Mrs. Henderson's face lights up with the gratitude of someone receiving validation for enormous effort. "Oh, I am so glad you enjoyed it," she replies. Though what she really means is thank you for noticing, thank you for saying something, thank you for acknowledging the work. They discuss specific details, the excellent martinis, the comfortable seating arrangements, the way the evening just flowed so naturally. Mrs. Caldwell does not mention that she noticed the water stain on the ceiling, or that the cheese platter ran out around 9. These observations are filed away privately, mental notes for her own future hosting, small imperfections that humanize the evening without diminishing it. What she shares aloud are only compliments, generous and genuine, because criticizing someone's party is a social transgression that marks you as unkind, ungenerous, possibly jealous. At the post office, Mr. Martin encounters Mr. Henderson collecting mail. "Great party Saturday," he says, the masculine version of party analysis, briefer but no less meaningful. Henderson practically beamed. "Thanks for coming. We should do it again soon." The men nod, understanding passing between them. The party was successful, bonds were maintained, social obligations were fulfilled, life continues smoothly. But not all the talk is entirely positive. In Mrs. Reynolds's kitchen 3 doors down, a smaller gathering occurs, coffee and speculation served in equal measure. "I thought the party was nice," Mrs. Reynolds says carefully, the word nice carrying a weight that suggests qualified approval. "But did you notice how warm the room got? No one opened a window all evening," her friend nods knowingly. "And those little sandwiches were gone by 8:30. I wanted to try one, but they disappeared so quickly." This is the other side of neighbourhood talk, the gentle criticisms shared privately, never maliciously, but with the understanding that every party has flaws, every hostess makes choices that could be improved. These observations will not reach Mrs. Henderson directly, but they will circulate quietly, informing other hostesses, shaping future parties, creating an invisible standard that everyone aims for and no one quite achieves. The younger couple from down the street, still new to the neighbourhood's social ecosystem, discuss the party over breakfast. "Do you think we stayed long enough?" the wife asks anxiously. "Did we say the right things?" Her husband, equally uncertain, reassures her that they did fine, though neither of them feels entirely confident. They are learning, absorbing the unwritten rules through observation and occasional missteps, gradually understanding that every party is both social event and evaluation, that every guest performance is noted, remembered, measured. By Tuesday, the party has been thoroughly processed by the neighbourhood. It has been praised and analysed, complimented and quietly critiqued, transformed from an actual event into a shared memory, a reference point for future gatherings. When someone mentions hosting their own cocktail party next month, Mrs. Henderson's party becomes the standard, the recent example everyone remembers, the bar that must be met or exceeded. Wednesday afternoon, Mrs. Henderson encounters Mrs. Martin at the dry cleaners. "People are still talking about your party," Mrs. Martin says warmly. "Everyone had such a wonderful time." Mrs. Henderson feels a flush of pride mixed with relief. The party has been judged successful. Her reputation as a hostess has been maintained, possibly even enhanced. The exhaustion, the stress, the hours of preparation were worth it. She drives home feeling validated, already thinking ahead to the next gathering, already planning improvements based on mental notes she took throughout the evening. She will order more ice trays. She will make double the hors d'oeuvres. She will remember to crack a window. Because that is how hosting works in the 1950s. Each party informs the next. Each success raises the bar slightly higher, each gathering becoming part of an ongoing performance that defines who you are in your neighborhood, your social circle, your carefully constructed life. The talk will continue for a few more days before fading, displaced by newer events, fresher gossip, the next party that will generate its own wave of analysis and discussion. But for this week, in this neighborhood, Mrs. Henderson's cocktail party is the story everyone tells, the standard everyone references, the memory everyone shares. And in the quiet economy of suburban social life, where reputation is currency and hosting is art, that is the greatest compliment she could receive. You stand in your own living room the following weekend, looking at your calendar. Your neighbours hosted you Saturday. Now, according to the invisible social contract, you must host them. Not immediately, that would seem desperate, but not too long from now either. That would seem ungrateful or aloof. The acceptable window is somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks. So you mark a date, begin planning your own cocktail party, and the cycle continues. Hosting is not a one-time act of generosity. It is part of an ongoing exchange, a delicate web of obligation and connection that binds the neighborhood together. You give because you have received. You receive because you will give, and no one ever questions it. The calendar hangs on your kitchen wall, squares filled with appointments, obligations, reminders. Your finger traces the weeks ahead, counting forward from last Saturday. 4 weeks feels slightly rushed, suggesting eagerness that borders on desperation. 7 weeks feels too distant, suggesting you are dragging your feet, perhaps hoping they will forget, perhaps not valuing the relationship enough to prioritize reciprocation. 6 weeks, that is the sweet spot. Far enough away to avoid seeming anxious, close enough to demonstrate genuine appreciation. You mark the date in pencil first, tentative, already calculating logistics, a Saturday evening. Not the first Saturday too soon, not the last Saturday of the acceptable window, too close to the deadline. The third Saturday you decide, circling it lightly. Then you begin the mental inventory that every host must conduct. Glassware, liquor, mixer, ice trays, appetizers, cleaning supplies, the physical resources required to transform your home into a space worthy of guests. Your spouse notices you staring at the calendar. Planning something, they ask, and you explain the obligation, the timeline, the necessity of reciprocity. They nod, understanding immediately. Of course, we should have them over. It is our turn. The phrasing is revealing. Our turn, as though hosting is a game with rules everyone follows, positions everyone occupies, a rotation as predictable as the seasons. The planning begins immediately. You cannot simply invite the Hendersons without considering the broader social implications. Who else attended their party? The Martins, the Caldwells, the younger couple from down the street. Should you invite all of them? Inviting the Hendersons alone feels too intimate, suggests a closer relationship than perhaps exists. But inviting everyone who attended their party feels like copying, lacks originality, makes your gathering feel derivative rather than distinct. You compromise. You will invite the Hendersons, obviously. You will invite the Martins because they are good friends and their absence would be noticed. You will add the Clarks from across the street, who were not at the Hendersons' party, adding freshness to your gathering while still maintaining the reciprocal core. 6 people total, a manageable number, large enough to feel festive, small enough to control. But even this decision carries weight. By inviting some of the same guests, you're acknowledging the Hendersons' party, honouring it through imitation. By adding new guests, you are asserting your own social identity, demonstrating that your circle is not identical to theirs, that your gathering will have its own character. Every choice is a communication, every decision a message sent through the invisible network of neighbourhood relationships. You begin planning the menu, immediately comparing it mentally to what the Hendersons served. You cannot serve the same dishes. That would be unoriginal, possibly insulting, suggesting you lack your own ideas. But you also cannot serve something dramatically different that might seem like criticism, like you're suggesting their choices were insufficient. You aim for parallel sophistication. If they served deviled eggs, you will serve stuffed mushrooms. If they offered shrimp cocktail, you will provide cheese puffs. Similar levels of effort, different expressions of hospitality. The liquor inventory comes next. You check your bar cart, noting what needs replenishing. The gin is low. The vermouth is nearly empty. You make a shopping list, calculating quantities based on the Hendersons' party. What worked, what ran short. You will buy extra ice trays, remembering the brief panic you witnessed when their supply ran low. You will learn from their party, incorporating their successes, avoiding their small failures. Your spouse asks about the budget. Hosting is expensive, the liquor alone a significant investment, plus food, plus the cleaning supplies, plus the new cocktail napkins you suddenly realize you need because your current ones look slightly shabby compared to the Hendersons' elegant linen versions. You calculate quickly, doing the mental math that every host performs, balancing hospitality against finances, knowing that skimping will show but overspending is foolish. Over the following days, the party planning becomes a constant background hum in your mind. You clip recipes from magazines. You drive past the liquor store, making mental notes of prices. You assess your living room with a critical eye, seeing it as your guests will see it, noting the lamp that needs a new bulb, the corner that could use better arrangement, the carpet that should be shampooed before anyone arrives. The obligation feels heavy sometimes, this requirement to reciprocate, to maintain the social exchange, to ensure that relationships remain balanced. But it also feels meaningful. This is how neighborhoods work, how communities form, how people stay connected. You host because they hosted. They will host again because you hosted. And through this endless cycle of invitation and obligation, reciprocity and exchange, the bonds strengthen, the relationships deepen, the neighborhood becomes more than just houses on a street. You look at the circled date on your calendar and feel a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. 6 weeks to plan, 6 weeks to prepare, 6 weeks until it is your turn to open your home, mix drinks, serve food, create the illusion of effortless hospitality. The Hendersons set the standard last weekend. Now you must meet it, match it, possibly exceed it, all while making it look like you barely tried. You sigh, already exhausted by the idea, already committed to the task. Because in the social economy of 1950s suburbia, reciprocity is not optional. It is the currency that keeps everything flowing, the oil that prevents friction, the invisible force that transforms isolated families into a functioning community. They gave you an evening. Now you owe them one. And somewhere, in your calendar, that debt is marked, waiting to be paid. You sit at your kitchen table, sipping coffee, reflecting on the evening. There were so many rules. Rules you followed without thinking. Rules you absorbed simply by watching others. Do not arrive early. Do not leave last. Compliment the hostess but let her deflect. Accept a refill even if you're not thirsty. Laugh at jokes even if they are not funny. Dress well but not ostentatiously. Drink socially but not excessively. Be warm but not intrusive. Be engaged but not dominating. These were the commandments of the cocktail party. Never written, never taught, yet universally understood. And somehow, miraculously, most people managed to follow them. You think about your own performance, replaying moments, evaluating choices. When you arrived, you paused on the porch, checking your watch, waiting for the exact right moment to knock. You did not need anyone to tell you this was required. You simply knew, through some process of social osmosis, that arriving even 2 minutes early would create discomfort, would catch the hostess unprepared, would violate an invisible boundary. Inside, you accepted the drink your host offered, even though you would have preferred water. You knew, without being told, that refusing the first drink is a small rejection, a signal that you're not fully participating in the evening's rituals. So you took the martini, sipped it slowly, and when he appeared 30 minutes later to refresh it, you accepted again, understanding that empty glasses are the host's failure, that keeping you supplied is his way of caring for you. You complimented the hostess on her home, her food, her hospitality, and when she deflected with modest dismissals, you did not press. You understood the dance. She must minimize her effort. You must insist on its excellence. She must deflect again. And then you both move on, the ritual complete. To push harder would be to make her uncomfortable. to force her to acknowledge the labour she has spent hours trying to conceal. When conversations turned to topics that felt dangerous, politics, religion, personal troubles, you noticed how the group collectively steered away, how someone would ask a redirecting question, how the energy would shift back to safer ground. You participated in this steering without conscious thought, adding your own safe questions, your own gentle redirections, helping maintain the evening's smooth surface. You knew not to monopolise conversations, not to tell stories that went on too long, not to interrupt others mid-sentence. These rules were never posted on the wall, never included in the invitation, yet everyone followed them. And when Mr. Martin began a story that stretched beyond the acceptable length, you saw how others gently disengaged, how attention drifted, how the social group punished the violation without anyone saying a word. You dressed appropriately without needing instructions. The invitation said casual, but you understood this was code, that casual meant cocktail attire, that showing up in anything less would mark you as someone who did not understand. You spent an hour choosing your outfit, calibrating the level of formality, aiming for that perfect middle ground that signals respect without ostentation. And when you arrived and saw everyone dressed similarly, you felt relief, confirmation that you had decoded the message correctly. You knew when to leave without checking a clock or receiving a signal. The room's energy shifted, conversation softened, and you understood that the evening was ending, that staying longer would transform you from guest to burden. You rose with the second wave of departures, neither too early nor too late, your timing perfect because you had learned to read the invisible cues that govern social gatherings. These rules exist nowhere in writing. No book explains them. No parent sat you down and listed them explicitly, yet you know them, have internalized them so completely that following them feels natural, automatic, like breathing. You learned by watching, by absorbing, by making small mistakes and adjusting, by existing in a culture that transmits its expectations through observation rather than instruction. You think about the younger couple at the party, how they seemed slightly uncertain, how they watched others for cues, how they were clearly still learning the code. You remember being that couple once, newly married, newly relocated, attending your first neighbourhood party, and feeling like an anthropologist dropped into an alien culture. You watched everything. You mimicked behaviours. You learned through trial and error what was acceptable and what was not. And now, years later, you follow the rules without thinking. They have become part of you, woven into your social instincts, shaping your behaviour so completely that you rarely notice you are following them. You arrive on time, you dress appropriately, you compliment sincerely, you drink socially, you leave gracefully. You do all of this because everyone does all of this, because the system works only when everyone participates, because one person breaking the rules threatens the entire delicate structure. You finish your coffee and rinse the cup, thinking about how strange it is that so much of life is governed by agreements no one ever signed, rules no one ever wrote, expectations that exist purely in the collective understanding of a group. The cocktail party is a perfect microcosm of this phenomenon, a gathering where success depends entirely on everyone knowing and following rules that officially do not exist. And yet it works. Somehow, miraculously it works. People gather in living rooms across America every weekend, following these invisible scripts, performing these unwritten rituals, creating evenings that feel warm and successful, precisely because everyone knows their part. The rules are never spoken because speaking them would break the spell, would expose the machinery behind the magic, would reveal that the effortless elegance everyone admires is actually an elaborate performance that requires extraordinary effort. So the rules remain silent, passed down through observation, transmitted through culture, learned through participation, and every weekend in living rooms lit by carefully positioned lamps, people follow them perfectly, creating the illusion that hosting is natural, that social grace is innate, that everyone simply knows how to behave because knowing is just part of being civilized, educated, properly raised. You stand, stretch, and look at your calendar at the date you circled for your own party. 6 weeks to prepare, 6 weeks to ensure you follow all the rules, every single one, the ones you know consciously and the ones you follow without thinking. Because that is how it works. That is how it has always worked. And that is how it will continue to work, for as long as people gather in living rooms to drink cocktails and pretend that elegance is effortless, and everyone somehow, mysteriously, beautifully, knows exactly what to do. So tonight, as you settle into the quiet of your own home, take a moment to think about the people who stood in those living rooms, balancing drinks and small talk, performing elegance while their feet ached and their smiles grew tired. They were not trying to be perfect. They were trying to belong. They were opening their doors and saying, in the only language their era allowed, "You matter to me. You are welcome here. Let us pretend together that life is graceful and warm and kind." They did not think of themselves as living history. They were just living, following invisible rules, mixing martinis, arranging flowers, showing up on time, leaving gracefully, doing the small, exhausting work of maintaining connection in a world that made connection feel like performance. And maybe that is the lesson, that community has always required effort, that warmth has never been effortless, that inviting someone in has always been an act of courage disguised as hospitality. So as you close your eyes tonight, maybe carry forward something small from that era. Not the rules or the rigidity, not the pretending or the polish, but the trying. The belief that gathering matters, that showing up matters, that opening your door even when you're tired, even when your home is imperfect, even when you're not sure you can pull it off is still worth doing. Because people need each other. They needed each other in 1955, and they need each other now. History is not always grand. Sometimes it is just a cocktail party, and a neighbour who remembered your name, and a few hours where loneliness was held at bay by ice cubes and deviled eggs, and the stubborn human insistence that we are better together than alone. And that, always, has been enough. Sleep well,